Hello everyone, thank you very much for coming. This is the World Economic Forum annual meeting of the New Champions 27 in Dalian, China, where the overall theme of the meeting is on inclusive growth in the fourth industrial revolution. And this is a press conference on the top 10 emerging technologies report. You actually have some press releases on the front row if you need to see the report. It's also filmed and webcast live, and you have translation headsets if you want to listen in Mandarin. I'm delighted to be joined by, on my immediate left is Jeffrey Carbeck, who's a specialist leader in advanced materials and manufacturing, DC innovations at Deloitte USA. That's correct? Right. Okay, perfect. Mariette DiChristina, Editor-in-Chief of Scientific American. Thank you very much. And we have also Dr. Lee Sang-yup, Distinguished Professor and Dean of the Korea Advanced Institute of Science and Technology in the Republic of Korea. Thank you very much for joining. We'll hear a bit from our panelists, and then if time allows, we'll also have some Q&A some questions and answers from the floor. So I think I'll go first to Mariette. Could you just give us an overview of the report and the technologies that you'll see?
Thanks so much. It's great to be here to talk about a great place to do it at the annual meeting of New Champions here in Dalian, where many innovations and how they are how they're powering our economies. So a thing I wanted to say, because you have the whole list in front of you, is that when I was looking at it overall, I was thinking about some themes. And there are three really powerful themes here that kind of ring to the grand challenges that the globe is working on. I might call those themes a healthier world, a smarter world, and a more sustainable world.
Healthier, smarter, and more sustainable.
And more sustainable. And if you look at the technologies, they fall almost split almost a third, one third, one third, which we didn't do on purpose. But it just so happens, and it is kind of illustrative of how they're trying to address the multiple challenges that we all face. So, I wanted to, on the healthier world part, there are non-invasive ways of testing for cancer, a new way called the Human Cell Atlas to analyze all the cells in the body, vaccines made from genes, and these are just a handful of things, but these are some of the ones that are really emerging out of the labs.
These are extraordinary technologies. Dr. Lee, can you give your thoughts on the report and the technologies that you're seeing?
Right. Well, this is the 6th edition of the list, and I was very fortunate and highly honored enough to start this list announcement when I was the chair of the Global Agenda Council on Emerging Technologies, and Jeff Carbeck and I have been working on this for forever together, which is also my great honor, by the way, my friend. And I think this year's list, thanks to great leadership by Mariette with the help with the Scientific American, I think we are becoming to list up those technologies that are more relevant in the next few years. What I mean by that is when we first selected, the topics are rather broad. For example, synthetic biology is one of them. It's huge. I mean, it covers everything. But now it's more tangible, very specific. And I don't know if you two will agree, but I've seen the list of technologies as candidates first. And some of those were more visionary, more futuristic. But those are not selected this year, because we are focusing on those technologies that are emerging, which means that it will be tangibly accessible in a couple of years with a high impact.
And where do you think you might see some of these technologies being applied?
So we expect, for example, in my case, at least 3 to 5 years, we might see great impact of these technologies on our society. So that's sort of the criteria of this year's selection, I would say.
Sorry. You were going to say something, Mariette.
Well, I just wanted to add really quickly that one of the reasons we feel really confident about the list this year is we tapped the forums future councils and an expert network, and also even opened the list up for additional submissions, and Scientific American's Board of Advisors. So we had quite a network of real experts in a variety of disciplines to help tell us what are the things that are really poised to change the world.
Jeff, I want to go to you, but just for the benefit of the audience, I thought we could actually just quickly list the top 10. There's liquid biopsies, there's harvesting clean water from air, there's deep learning for visual tasks, liquid fuels from sunshine, the human cell atlas, just one moment, precision farming, affordable catalyst for green vehicles, and genomic vaccines, sustainable design of communities, and finally quantum computing. Sorry, Jeff, you were...
I want to say a little bit about the process, and then I think try and articulate, I think, something also that's important about the list. So starting with the process, you know, there's this sort of expansive gathering, right? And every year we end up with, you know, a very, very long list. And then the real value, I think, of the board and the steering committee is narrowing that down to the 10 that you see. And I think one question we often get is, how did you choose those 10, right? And how are they different from the other, say, 110 that we didn't choose? And I think it gets down to the uniqueness of this list as well, which is, if you go back and just look at the words you read, you're really not reading technologies. You're talking about solutions that have a technology embedded in them. And so when we get to really choosing the things that we think are going to be most relevant, to me it sort of has three basic criteria. So one is there's a solution, like a water harvesting system. So there's a system that's solving a problem. Yes, embedded in it there are materials technologies, there are photovoltaic technologies, but it's really that system that's solving a problem of how do we extract clean, drinkable water, in this case, from the air where there's no other source of water. And then the second one is that we have some sense that it's a stackable system. And stackable meaning it has a way of scaling easily. So, you know, if we had to go build a huge centralized water purification system, that probably wouldn't make our list because that's not really a stackable system versus something that's modular, portable, and distributed.
Something small that can be sort of scaled up.
Scaled based on demand, exactly.
Okay,
right.
scale based on demand. Okay.
So we've got systems that are stackable, and then I think the third thing that comes across very clearly is that they really represent a sustainable innovation, and sustainable along, you know, the three key dynamics. They are sustainable from a business perspective. They're going to generate profit, but they're also going to be sustainable from a people perspective. They're inclusive. They're going to and help humanity. And I think the third one is that they tend to be very sustainable from a planet perspective. So many of the things that we focus on are things that are addressing some of the big challenges around resource scarcity and other things. And so when you put those those three lenses on it, right, so solutions that are stackable and sustainable, that helps us to narrow down and really get to a list of 10 that we think are going to have impact.
When we were, Mariette, when we were speaking earlier, it's interesting you say that you talk about, yeah, that they're solving something, they're stackable, scalable, and sustainable in these different ways, like in terms of business, in terms of people, they're inclusive and environmental. Mariette, when we were talking earlier, we talk. You sort of used the expression, I think, a cheat sheet.
Yeah,
like it's something that that if you're not an expert, if you're not a scientist, but say maybe you come from the policy field, or you work for a government, yet these technologies are quite important. This is a very sort of useful list to be able to look at these things.
Right, and that's part of the point, isn't it? I mean, the world is advancing so quickly in so many dimensions. And we all have these grand challenges. Water is a really, really important one for all of us. The list also talks about food and how to look at and treat diseases. And how do you deal with all of these things? Well, you really need your expert councils to help advise you. And that's why I use the term cheat sheet for the top 10 list. What are the things that you need to focus on? Because they are going to provide a lot of opportunities and also some challenges. I mean, how will we deal with things like quantum computing? Where should it be appropriately applied or not? you know, we're not going to need that in a laptop, everybody's laptops. Or what are the ways we apply each of these technologies kind of properly?
Sang-Yu.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a meeting, the annual meeting of the new champions is very much a meeting where obviously you meet scientists, you meet leaders in technology, such as yourselves, but also, I mean, it's a chance for, I suppose, business and policy makers to be able to understand what is going to impact either their businesses, or if you're a policy maker, the people you represent, the societies you represent. Why is that? Why is that important? What sort of what for a sort of business or policy person could they gain from this?
Well, I think this list, with the help from World Economic Forum's platform of collection of experts, already integrated with the policymakers, give a solid background for very nicely selected list of technologies each country should look into. And if I take Korea as an example, yes, they take a look at this list very seriously, and they try to link it to the government-funded research scheme as well. Of course, I'm not saying that they are adopting all the technologies to fund the researchers on those topics only, but they try to at least map together with this top 10 emerging technology list from WEF, and then see if we are missing anything. And I don't think Korea is not the only country, and also it happens with other countries, because I heard from ministers and my friends that they look forward to seeing this list published. And of course it's embargoed, so they have to wait until this thing comes out.
Jeff, I mean, in the conversations that you have with sort of businesses or policymakers, do you get the sense that people are sort of scared about what technology is going to do to their organizations, or are they hopeful, optimistic? I mean, do they see sort of solutions to their problems? I mean, this is very much how the list is pitched, as you said earlier.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's a great question. I think oftentimes the list represents technologies that are potentially disruptive. So, for example, if you're in the auto industry and there's a new technology that would enable a completely different type of vehicle, that can be very disruptive to your current business. And so a lot of companies are looking at this and saying, okay, where do we need to pay attention to disruption in our business? Certainly that's true. But I think typically we see a more positive association with the list, which is by the time this list is generated, there's a fairly strong conviction that these are real technologies that are going to solve durable problems. And if you're doing that, you're probably going to have a financial success if you get into that space, right? And one of the things we find is that a lot of companies, and if you talk to leadership at the very highest level, and a lot of companies in manufacturing and other spaces, they feel overwhelmed. Right? They feel inundated by hundreds of new technologies every day. And so having some sort of guidepost about the few to actually focus on and think about more deeply, we find is very helpful. And also because they come from the forum, I think people understand that they have those other dimensions sort of integrated into them, and they have economic dimensions, they have policy dimensions, they have issues around partnerships and stakeholders, and they're not just driven by how many citations an article has received or how many patents there are, right? It's really brings and sort of embedded into it the power and the vision of the forum in that list. And so it's quite clear that they encompass more than just a very popular or exciting technology. It's actually one that's going to have these dimensions that will largely make it successful if the investments are made appropriately.
Mariette, I see you and Sang-Yu are both sort of nodding in agreement there.
But I also think, wherever there's a challenge, there's also an opportunity, just to underscore what Jeff is saying there. And for me anyway, as a person who's represents a publication that since 1845 has been trying to chronicle new technologies and how they shape the world, we also find these things inspiring in many ways. If we can systematically incorporate these sorts of technologies, like if you could understand, have a catalog to what every cell in the body does at what times, what could you do with that? So many things, so many things. And actually that's another theme for me of this year's list as well. So many of the items are systems-wide impacts, whether it's systems-wide in the body or how are we going to provide more reliable food sources through things like precision farming. You know, they're system approaches. Or we made houses more energy efficient. How about whole blocks? How about whole networks of communities? And I really find that interesting. You were talking about lenses, the changing of the lens also from the very, very small, like quantum, to the very, very large, you know, where we can use these different lenses to better understand the world around us and to help address some of humanity's big challenges.
Sang-Yu?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And it's not just for the policymakers or technocrats or, you know, companies who are involving, you know, technologies for their business, but also for public. Even though they are not directly engaged in, you know, deploying these technologies, they become very interested, and I can see that from the what do you call the text of the under the news, that wow, this technology is really exciting. I might need to buy one for myself. Things like those. So even though they are not capable of developing the technology themselves, the public is very actively engaged in all these, you know, exciting technology being announced. And of course, it's tagged with the experts selection of top 10 out of, you know, this World Economic Forum and Scientific American community of experts.
Yes, yeah. We can have some questions from the floor. Any hands? I mean, I have a question myself. Are there any technologies that you feel are particularly pertinent for, I mean, we're here in Dalian, China. Any technologies that you feel are particularly pertinent here? Jeff?
Sure.
All of them.
Yeah, all of them.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think all of them. I'll pull out one or two, not because I think they're the most pertinent, but maybe just to give you an example of how, right? So certainly, you know, precision farming is actually a whole collection of technologies to come together to actually dramatically increase not only the yield of production in agriculture, but one of the things we're starting to learn is also about nutritional content and things like that really affect the overall health and well-being of a population. And so if you can start to link, you know, the needs, the nutritional needs, and understanding how that's changing over time and will change over time, these sort of precision farming technologies, you start to be able to be much more efficient in meeting the demands of a growing population, growing both in number and in prosperity. And that's actually one of the big challenges. As populations grow in prosperity, their nutritional demands change. And so it's not just having more food, but it's having the right kinds of food and being able to produce it very efficiently. You know, that's something we're going to face globally, but certainly that's something that's going to have impact here in China. And
is that something you've particularly heard at this meeting?
Yeah, we've heard that. It came up quite a bit in actually in several of the meetings around one of the industries I work in is in the chemicals and advanced materials industry, and a lot of what people are talking about is how agriculture is actually getting way out in front, even though it's a very old industry. It's getting way out in front of more traditional chemical manufacturing and doing things like precision farming and leveraging data and sensors and analytics to solve the customer need. And so the industries are looking at that and saying, wow, look at an old industry like agriculture and how it's been transformed through these tools. Maybe other industries that are basics could also take advantage of these kinds of advances.
All right.
You know, just reflecting on the systems thinking there too. So I also was really taken by precision farming's advances in you know, recent years, especially the ability to sense right plant to plant and exactly manage amount of nutrients or amount of water. But if you think about that and you think about it as an even broader system, also on the list, we have literally pulling water out of thin air, even as dry as 20% humidity, which is really something. That's desert air, which is amazing if we could be able to scale that. And then if you think about also sustainably designing a community, so now you have a system of food, water, and community all becoming more and more efficient. That seems especially relevant to me as China, as the world grows more urban. We're going to need to be able to be extremely efficient in the way we do things so that we can all live, you know, kind of happy and healthy lives.
Sang-Yu.
Well, As I said, I think all 10 are so important. However, I myself, working on the field of biotechnology, I like those 3 a little
You can
more.
talk about your expertise, it's fine.
So one of them is non-invasive diagnostics of cancer. And that is not entirely new because we have been doing it through identifying markers, molecular markers such as proteins from the blood.
This is
For
liquid
cancer
biopsies.
diagnostics.
Okay.
Yeah. Non-invasive way, by the way.
Okay.
Here, non-invasive means probably less invasive, I should say, because to get the blood out, you actually have to get some blood out of you. But it's much better than operation or surgery. So it's much easier way and a simple way to do so. So instead of identifying those limited number of less consistent molecular markers, now scientists came up with this circulating tumor DNA, which they could detect thanks to the advances in a lot of different equipments. And then now they can link it to early diagnosis of cancer. Another bio-related technology selected this year was human cell atlas. So here we would like to decipher every single cell type, how they function in our body, what their roles are, how they communicate, etc. And if you are, say, 100 kilogram human, then you probably have about 100 billion cells on you. And you want to, of course they can be grouped, but you want to decipher how they function through molecular fingerprinting, which means that you want to locate location of exact different proteins at the inside the cell, at different organelles, for example. And the most advanced version of a human cell atlas program is a human proteome atlas, where they want to map all the known proteins inside a cell. And they have created over the last, whatever, 5 or 6 years by a leading scientist, Matthias Uhlin in Sweden, who did a great job of releasing more than 10 million confocal images, which is amazing. And they are all free. Any scientist, public can access to the website and they get the image and then they can use it for whatever research they want to perform. And that will lead to a much better design of precision medicine and also general understanding of biology, which will ultimately lead to better healthcare development. So the bio-related one was, I believe, a genomic vaccine, and that's important because, you know, nowadays the vaccine we get is mainly proteins made out of eggs or other manufacturing system using animal cell culture, etc. But now genomic vaccine will allow basically injection of DNA or RNA, and then your own body basically makes the previous vaccine, that's protein, to fight. So it reduces the time of manufacturing vaccine because it's obvious when there's a, for example, very serious mutant influenza attacks human society, and if you know, it's very fatal, then we are in big trouble because it spreads so rapidly. And then manufacturing vaccine, now yes, we made the vaccine, and I'm sorry, but a lot of people are already dead. That's not good. So by injecting such a nucleic acid, even though it requires a lot more research and clinical trials, is giving you hope that you can actually develop immune response much faster than previous vaccine versions.
I think we have just a few minutes left, but I wanted to see how you thought actually that this list compared to maybe either lists of previous years, and I have the list from 2015 if you wanted to do it, but also generally sort of emerging technologies that people have talked about maybe sort of 5-6 years ago. Sang-Yeob?
Well, I think I think I briefly mentioned that when we selected the first 10, they were rather broad. But now, as Mariette and Jeff already said, this year is more tangible and system-wide. And I think I like what Jeff answered. It's sort of the collection of technologies to provide solution. So I think in that sense, a little bit different from the last 50 technologies. And I think we are doing better job every year.
Yeah, I
think
hope so. Yeah, hope so.
So I'll just stop there.
I just would add, one of the things you can see if you look through the past lists, which the forum have on the website, is the march of technology. So a couple of years ago, just before when we were talking we had fuel cell vehicles on last
Yes,
time we were in Dalian,
we had fuel
right?
cell vehicles, next
So-
generation robotics.
So fuel cell
Yeah.
vehicles, this time we have less expensive catalysts for fuel cell vehicles. So, you know, if we are going to make, you know, if we are going to make technology more available to everybody, we're going to have to figure out ways to make it more accessible to people, to make it easier to scale, cheaper, and so on. So I think one of the other things we're seeing is, yeah, the future does move forward. Things that come up that are challenges are one thing, but another is always advance. And at least from my perspective, the ability of science and technology to provide the innovations we need, you know, to live in a finite world, live sustainably in a finite world, is just, I feel hopeful watching the evolution of the, you know, the lists over time.
Jeff?
Yeah, I would just add, I think, to what Mariette just said, which is that I think as you look at the list over time, we see it shifting more towards these solution-based systems, but I think it becomes a more exciting list over time because I think many more people can relate to it because they understand the problem that's trying to be solved. They understand how the system that's articulated potentially could make a dramatic difference, and they're not sort of left just scratching their head saying, oh, that sounds very complicated from a chemistry or physics perspective. I actually get why it's important, and I think getting to the why, we've done a much better job with over time. I think our first lists were for other technologists, and I think now our lists are largely for everybody. You know, technologists, of course, can look at them and reflect, but we think it's for a much broader audience, and I think that's where the difference has really come over time.
And like you say, solutions that are sort of stackable, scalable, and also sustainable as well.
Exactly, that's right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming
Thank you.
today.